Yeah, we kicked him off today.
Poor Al. What was about to happen at some point?
I'm sorry, my dear. It's time for you to sashay away.
I'm glad it was you, David.
It seems appropriate.
Right?
Oh, yeah, you know, and it's Dr. Grossman's birthday, so that'll be fun.
It is Dr. Grossman's birthday.
So much news today.
And great breaking news also.
Yeah.
Justice.
Yeah. Oh, it's been a week, and it's still early. All right, well, it's going to be a good show. So.
It is.
Yes.
Welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news.
Tonight, we begin with breaking news. After 3 weeks of testimony that included dozens of witnesses and hours of video footage, the high-profile trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin in the killing of George Floyd has come to a close. Chauvin faced charges of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter over kneeling on Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes last May, in a gruesome scene captured on video that has since been viewed millions of times and ignited a wave of protests across the country and around the world. The jury was sequestered for deliberations beginning Monday. The jury has found former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin guilty on all the counts he faced over the death of George Floyd.
Yeah, I think everybody's relieved to see some justice.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Even if nothing's going to bring him back.
That's right.
But it is 7 p.m. Tuesday, April 20th, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
The world's first live daily queer evening news show, Out of the Closet and Into the Headlines on Q News Tonight.
Thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ evening news show. Whatever happens, you'll see it. This evening we bring you the news of and perspective representing the LGBTQ community from South Florida, America, and across our planet. I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, not Al Ferguson. I'm David Hopkins. We booted Al out tonight. Let's welcome my other anchors, Tony Lima. He's the Chief Operating Officer of Ariana Center Trans Latina, Florida, one of the nation's most important trans rights and services organizations in America. He's a longtime South Florida LGBTQ activist and political advocate, as well as the anchor of the world's first new live weekly trans talk show with trans hosts called Translation. Good evening, Tony.
Good evening, guys. I'm so happy to be here with you tonight and so anticipating this amazing new show, Translation. Watch for it. We should have our pilot out very, very soon.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Very excited.
Let's also welcome anchor Dr. Julio Capo Jr. He's an associate professor for the Department of History at Florida International University and deputy director of the FIU Wolfsonian Public Humanities Lab. He specializes in research of inter-American histories with a focus on queer, Latinx, race, immigration, and empire studies. He's the author of the book, Welcome to Fairyland, Queer Miami Before 1940. Good evening, Julio.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Good to have you back. Tonight we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Tuesday, April 20th. First, let's queer up the world. Raúl Castro speaks about LGBTQ rights during Communist Party Congress. Raúl Castro, in his report to the 8th Congress of Cuba's Communist Party, the PCC, yesterday in Havana, referred to the rights of LGBTI plus people, gender-based violence, and discrimination based on skin color. The Cuban leader said, quote, "It continues to support the work of the Federation of Cuban Women and other institutions in the defense of women's rights and the denunciation of gender-based violence. The confrontation with prejudices associated with sexual orientation and gender identity will deepen," end quote. Castro also mentioned the process of drafting and discussing the family code, the law that must finally resolve whether LGBTI plus couples will have the right to marriage. He stated that work is already underway. The political leader moderated his comments later, declaring that the agendas of LGBTI plus, anti-racist, feminist, and animal rights groups are a goal of U.S. policy with the aim of achieving the breakdown of national unity. Raúl Castro drew attention to the benefits and dangers of using the internet and social networks, saying that, quote, "they can be used for the best and also the worst purposes." He's declared the internet is, quote, a virtual image of Cuba as a dying society with no future, about to collapse and give way to the much longed for social explosion that has created and disseminated it to the four winds, end quote. After referring to Cuba's economic situation, its international relations, and the state defense institutions, the 89-year-old political leader announced he was leaving the post of first secretary of the PCC's Central Committee. He gave his support to the current Cuban president, Miguel Diaz-Canel.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff going on there. Yeah, I'm a historian of Cuba, and this is so layered and really complicated. Cuba has had a really difficult, very violent history against LGBTQ folks since 1959, since the Cuban Revolution. And what this actually makes very clear, which is not, we've always known, is the need to create more space and to hear more voices outside and create space for dissent outside of those of the government. And this is a clear example of that. Things like the internet are such an important part of democratizing our lives and making space for things like dissent. Like there needs to be space for opposition and for finding ways to challenge those which are imposing particular viewpoints and create more space for viewpoints.
It seemed like a lot of his comments were just mentioning people for the sake of mentioning them to appease them, without actually offering anything. I haven't read the full transcript, but it just seemed like circle speak politics, and hopefully we can get some more positive change. There's been some in recent years.
And more of the same, right?
Yeah.
For 60 some odd years, we've been seeing ultimate repression, criminalizing of LGBT people, of women, of anyone who has dissented from the government. And this is just evidence that nothing's changed. There is no evolution for Cuba. They are stuck where they're stuck, and we just need to keep our borders open so many people can continue to leave and come to the United States and other places where they can be free to be who they are. But this is it's just a lot of PR. And like you said, David, there's nothing really there, no substance, there's no change, there's no anything. So let's just move on. Next, we queer up business. A happier story, Kellogg's releases Pride-themed cereal with GLAAD. There's some sweet news in the world of cereal. Kellogg's, in a partnership with the LGBTQ+ media organization GLAAD, has released a Pride-themed cereal called Together with Pride, retailing for $4. Together with Pride will be on supermarket shelves in May, just prior to the month of LGBTQ+ festivities. For every purchase, Kellogg's will donate $3 to GLAAD. For the donation to occur, patrons must upload a copy of their receipt to kellogg'sfamilyrewards.com. The 7.8-ounce box is full of a rainbow variety of heart-shaped cereal bites and even edible glitter. Kellogg's famous cereal figures are gathered on the exterior illustration, including Toucan Sam, Tony the Tiger, and the Rice Krispie elves Snap, Crackle, and Pop.
I mean, it all sounds so sugary. And I don't know if I want to eat glitter. I don't know if I want, but I'm kind of,
I just think it's fantastic that Kellogg's is doing this again. David was telling us off air earlier that they did this for Spirit Day a couple years back. So it's wonderful to see a huge company like this taking this kind of inclusive stance. And I love the idea of seeing this image of all of those characters that we all know and love as children together in unity for Pride.
Yeah, and if you want some fun stories, Google why Kellogg created cornflakes one time and look at where the company is now, and it's a big difference.
Maybe Snap will come out of the closet.
Oh,
or Pop.
Or Crackle. All right. Let's queer up, or further queer up, entertainment.
Further.
Cher is considering a guest appearance on RuPaul's Drag Race. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly for her new documentary, Cher and the Loneliest Elephant, the pop icon was asked if she'll ever make an appearance on the Emmy Award-winning RuPaul's Drag Race. Her reply, quote, "I'm gonna have to go on it at some point." The Oscar-winning entertainment also praised her, quote, "amazing fans" for the desire to see her guest spot on the show, which has referenced and celebrated her career on numerous occasions. Cher, whose relationship with RuPaul dates all the way back to her appearance on the RuPaul show in 1997, said, quote, "I've known him for a long time. He's such a cool guy. I would consider it. I have watched it, he's smart, and I love him. He's the coolest guy ever. That's a lot of love. What he's been able to do is amazing, end quote.
Whoa. Cher seems like she'll pop up anywhere to get some FaceTime. She was on Will and Grace. And she's an amazing actress and such a great icon, and I don't know how she hasn't been on this show yet.
It's about time. They've paid like homage to her several times, like with Cher, the unauthorized Rusical, and a series of other references. So it's about time that Cher get it together and show up on RuPaul's Drag Race. We need you.
Get it together.
She doesn't make that many appearances actually anymore. I feel like now it's kind of like just drop the glitter along with the Rice Krispie treats or whatever.
It's like she's closing in on Dolly Parton. Like they're both like 800 years old, but they're both amazing.
800.
I mean, she looks good.
Well, parts of her. Parts of her.
Get it, girl.
On that note, next up, welcome to Q's Q&A on LGBTQ health and pandemic. For nearly a year, this segment has been unique in America, answering your LGBTQ community questions about our unique health needs. We're proud to have Queer News Tonight health anchor, Dr. Howard Grossman.
Yes, he is an American pioneer in HIV/AIDS medical treatment, and he was the executive director of the American Academy of HIV Medicine. He is a nationally recognized medical expert and a proud member of our LGBTQ community.
And before we move to this week's viewer questions, Howard, what are your thoughts over this week's health news for our community?
This week, I think, we've seen good numbers as far as people getting vaccinated, which is great. But we've also seen the other side, that there's huge numbers of people who refuse to get vaccinated. I've had several conversations this week with patients who are fearful, want more information, want more long-term data, or just decide that it's not for them. And I think that the problem is that people who aren't getting vaccinated don't realize that they are presenting a threat to ending the epidemic and to everyone else out there. Because the more people who don't get vaccinated, the more the virus gets to replicate, and the more it does that, the more it gets to mutate. And so we can end up with much more virulent strains. So until we vaccinate the majority of people, that's going to be a problem. And I think we really have two tracks these days. And I think that's confusing for people. So on the one hand, you have vaccinated people who really can do a lot more, can be with other vaccinated people without masks, can be less fearful, can travel more easily. And then you have unvaccinated people who are getting infected at very high rates. So people are like, well, if everybody's getting vaccinated, why are the rates going up? Well, the rates are going up because the people who won't get vaccinated or can't get vaccinated. And so we have these two tracks that are not mutually exclusive. I think that's been big news this week.
All right, well, let's jump right into the viewer questions.
I heard that you can still catch COVID after the vaccine. Why does the vaccine matter?
Well, remember that the vaccine, for example, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are about 95% effective. So that still means 5% of people, they're 95% effective at preventing hospitalization and death, okay? But people can still get infected and be asymptomatic. At least that is the thought. And that we may carry the virus in our respiratory systems, be able to pass it to other people who were not vaccinated. And so that's why we still need to wear masks around people of unknown vaccination status. But you're not going to get sick and you're not going to die. That is the big thing. There's actually a big study right now of 5,000 college students who've been vaccinated, and they're tracking all of their contacts, including family and other people, to see if this is really the case that people can harbor the virus and pass it to other people. We won't have that data, though, for about another 4.5 months. The study is only like 2 weeks old.
Gotcha.
That's so interesting. Dr. Grossman, Here's viewer question number 2. I saw that there are new strains appearing in Texas and India. What will this mean for the vaccines?
Well, and this is the problem, is that the virus is continuing to mutate in people who aren't vaccinated. Most mutations are going to be bad. Most mutations are going to cause the virus to not work as well. But there are some mutations that cause it to be more infectious. and more of a problem. So one of the things we're seeing with the British variant that's become the most common variant in the US at this point is that it is impacting younger people, and more younger people are getting hospitalized. And these are, again, people who aren't vaccinated. Now, so far, the vaccines seem to be effective against most of the variants. So, for example, there was data about the South African variant. Now, remember, the vaccine is about 50 times more effective than it needs to be. So when they tell you that it is less effective against the South African variant, okay, so if it's half as effective, it's still 25 times more than it needs to be. And so I think, you know, you need to look at how what they're really saying when they're saying these things. So far, it seems to be okay. Whether there will be a variant that develops that's resistant to these vaccines, we don't know. And of course, the other thing we heard this week was that, you know, the head of Pfizer said that you're probably going to need a booster at a year. But the thing is, we don't know that. We don't have the data. Right now, people who've been vaccinated are maintaining their antibody levels. We don't know that those antibody levels are going to fade at a year, but I'm glad that they're preparing so that they will have a supply if we all need boosters.
Nice.
And the final question of the evening. Does vitamin D help with COVID?
No. No, that's easy. No, there were some preliminary things that said vitamin D, and some other things were useful, but I don't think they really make any difference.
Gotcha. Well, that is tonight's Q's Q&A on LGBTQ health and pandemic. We're here every Tuesday with Dr. Howard Grossman to answer your questions. If you need medical assistance, we encourage you to contact Midway Specialty Care Center with 10 locations in Florida, and especially Dr. Howard Grossman here in Wilton Manors and all across South Florida. We also want to thank you, Howard, and wish you a very happy birthday. I hear you're scooting out to go to dinner tonight, so we got some confetti on you.
Thanks for getting me in early tonight. I appreciate it.
All right, have a great night and happy birthday.
Have a great week.
Yeah. So with that, we're going to return to today's LGBTQ headlines. Up next, we're going to queer up health. A quarter of HIV-positive Americans have experienced intimate partner violence. HIV-positive Americans are at a high risk for intimate partner violence, with 1 in 4, 26.3%, having experienced it at least once. New data has shown. The findings from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, published in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine, use data from the Medical Monitoring Project, a surveillance system designed to learn more about the experiences and needs of people who are living with HIV. The study showed that not only are HIV-positive people in the U.S. at higher risk of physical abuse at the hands of their intimate partners, but that intimate partner violence is associated with adverse health consequences among people diagnosed with HIV. It's also shown that 4.4% had experienced intimate partner violence within the last 12 months. Researchers said it was important that HIV-positive Americans are screened for intimate partner violence at initial HIV tests, as well as during routine appointments.
Very important. This is something we do at Ariana Center as we're intaking clients, people that are being referred to medical health care or mental health care. This is something that's routine because we see this a lot also with the trans community, especially trans women of color. And we know that a lot of the time they're dying at the hands of intimate partners. So this is very important information. We all need to take heed and continue to educate ourselves on what's necessary to take care of each other.
I think that's 100% right. For those most vulnerable within our communities, also the importance of coupling mental health with physical health. Right. That is that this is very difficult news, but it's also the importance to talk about. Right. I mean, it's so incredibly necessary to talk about these things outside of just medicalized spaces, but just to have conversations among all of us about the need to address these issues.
Yeah, and I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV, but I do imagine that a lot of this is rooted in stigma, HIV stigma. You know, it's so deep rooted in our community that it often affects even the people we're closest to.
So now we're going to continue to queer up South Florida. Queer it further. Florida Grand Opera is hosting the community conversation series, The Next Generation is Queer. Florida Grand Opera is hosting community conversations, The Next Generation is Queer, April 27 at 7:30 p.m. Admission is free. RSVP is strongly recommended, however. This special panel is hosted by the Center for Spiritual Living in Oakland Park. You can join a conversation with partners from across Florida to sustain advocacy for equality and inclusion. Together, the conversation focuses on shifting social attitudes towards greater respect and acceptance of LGBTQ+ communities. Community conversations are a series of thought-provoking discussions that connect the opera art form with religion, politics, and the humanities. Using the main stage season as a catalyst, these hour-long events, in partnership with other regional cultural organizations, serve adult audiences and stimulate conversations about life and art that speak to the communities of South Florida. Community Conversation series will focus on the opera Fellow Travelers, composed by Gregory Spears. The opera is set during the McCarthy era of the 1950s and focuses on the Lavender Scare, a witch hunt and mass firing of gay people from the United States government. The story centers on the love affair between two men working for the federal government, Hawkins Hawk Fuller, a State Department official, and Timothy Laughlin, a recent college grad working in a senator's office. FGO studio artists will also be a part of the program, performing selections from the opera Fellow Travelers. This upcoming program focuses on trans and non-binary people, among the most marginalized and vulnerable communities within the LGBTQ+ family. Meet some of the most powerful leaders representing these communities and learn more about the issues that affect the T and the Q. This conversation would be unimaginable within the context of the opera Fellow Travelers and the political climate during the 1950s. And the moderator is someone we know, Queer News Tonight anchor Tony Lima.
And just
I love that.
Get this right.
I love how you
Faye
said
what with you as well?
Well, Faye's been part of the two previous panels. So this is the third installment. We started off by talking about our coming out stories. Then we talked about the next frontier in LGBTQ advocacy and rights. And now we're focusing on the trans and non-binary community. But yes, Faye's been part of the last two. And lots of our friends actually that come through Happening Out Television Network's programming.
That's awesome.
So it's going to be great. Hopefully you can come out and join us. It's also live streamed on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
So if you can't make it, you can watch it live and send in your questions, but it's going to be a really interesting program.
I can't wait. I'm really
Excellent.
excited.
And that's our queer headlines for today. So let's catch up on the LGBTQ news surrounding COVID-19 with our special segment called Quarantine Quickies. Queer News Tonight has been LGBTQ America's most important news source on the pandemic, as we've reported on coronavirus on every news broadcast since January of 2020.
Tonight, we report the devastating effect coronavirus has had on the American and worldwide LGBTQ community in total cases and deaths. We also provide hope of a new light at the end of this long tunnel. As of tonight, more than 2,274,000 LGBTQ Americans have contracted COVID-19, and more than 40,000 LGBTQ Americans have died from coronavirus. As of today, more than 211 million vaccination doses have been administered in the U.S.
So that's our COVID-19 news for tonight. Next, we report that Happening Out Television Network is passionate about our support for the LGBTQ community. An example is Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale.
We're broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine and supporting that partnership. The network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ religious broadcast in the world, with more than 30,000 people watching every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and it's totally live. We encourage you to tune in. Our campaign of sponsorship proudly supports Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church. Watch this.
Dr. Ty Hauser, professor at Broward College and host of Gay Town Hall. Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
We'd also like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living here in Fort Lauderdale, for making this set in this amazing queer church campus possible.
Finally, we thank Queer News Tonight's hotel sponsor, Best Western I-95 Fort Lauderdale. This is the closest and best choice to the famous Wilton Drive, and our hosts and guests stay at this LGBTQ ally partner. We encourage you to stay here when visiting South Florida.
Happening Out Television Network is proud to sponsor the 23rd Annual Outshine LGBTQ+ Film Festival, April 23rd through May 2nd. Happening Out Television Network and all of our programs are proud to serve as their premier sponsor. Tickets and passes are now on sale at outshinefilm.com. Let's hear more about this Outshine LGBTQ Film Festival. Watch this.
Get your tickets now for the 23rd annual edition of the Outshine LGBTQ+ Film Festival, happening April 23rd to May 2nd. Don't miss our incredible grand opening drive-in event, followed by 10 days of non-stop films from here and all around the world that you can watch at home. Watch trailers and get your tickets at outshinefilm.com now.
Queer News Tonight is proud to showcase many of the film directors during the 23rd Annual Outshine LGBTQ+ Film Festival, and tonight we're pleased to feature the film AIDS Diva, The Legend of Connie Norman.
This is a documentary film on the self-appointed AIDS diva and masterful spokesperson for ACT UP Los Angeles in the late 80s and early 90s. Connie described herself as ex-drag queen, ex-hooker, ex-IV drug user, ex-high-risk youth, and current post-operative transsexual woman who is HIV positive, and simply a human being seeking my humanity.
Joining us tonight is director and producer Dante Alencastre. He is a Peruvian-born award-winning queer independent filmmaker based in Los Angeles, California, and he has directed and produced LGBTQ+ documentary films with a particular focus on social justice and visibility of the transgender community, including En el Fuego Dentro, Transvisible, Bambi Salcedo's Story, and Raising Zoe.
To tell us more about AIDS Diva, The Legend of Connie Norman, virtually playing at the Outshine LGBTQ+ Film Festival for its Florida premiere Saturday, April 24th through Wednesday, April 28th, is director and producer Dante Alencastre. Welcome, Dante, to Queer News Tonight.
Oh, it's such a pleasure being here, David, Tony, and Julio. Is it Julio? Or did I get it wrong?
You got it.
I got it right. Well,
I'm the only one here who doesn't speak Spanish.
Thank you for hosting me and allowing me to speak about my documentary. This is a documentary, as Tony mentioned, about Connie Norman, the self-appointed AIDS diva and ACT UP LA spokesperson in the early 90s Los Angeles. Connie Norman, who stood proudly in her multiple, fluid, and evolving LGBTQ identities, both beloved and confrontational. I hope with my film I have captured Connie's soulful and salty rantings and intersectional politics. And she served as a bridge builder between gender and politics and model wokeness in the early era of crisis. Connie is really an example of what an individual can do to raise awareness of oppression, injustice, and I think we need her voice where we're going right now, especially with our trans youth in Florida and other states.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the political landscape of America the past few years, has it affected the way you make these films, you know, with the division going on in the world right now?
Well, I started making this film as an idea probably right after Trump. I didn't want to mention him, but I had to. and I just remember somebody sent me a clip of Connie Norman speaking with Wally George, who's like a prototype or a early kind of Jerry Springer type. And even though I know it was kind of like, it was all staged, but obviously the bulk was against her, you know, even questioning whether she was trans or not. And, you know, I thought, wow, you know, she was doing this, putting herself out there as an openly trans woman in the 80s and 90s. Nobody was doing that. There was no T on LGBT, you know. And I just said, if we can learn from like our ancestor, this is one of the ancestors I want to learn from, because she was badass. But not only that, she was motherly, but she was always full of compassion and empathy. And this is what we needed, I think, after that election. And as we've seen, things haven't changed that much. When you watch the film, we're still fighting for the same things that Connie fought, universal health care and all the other things. And I just keep mentioning the trans youth because I'm very, very affected what was happening in Florida. And because my former film was about a trans youth here in LA, and I can only imagine how the families that are going through feel about the attacks that are being made on their families and their well-being.
I think the good news, thank you for saying that, Dante, very, very important. Our youth are the most important people we could be looking after because they are our future. The good news in Florida is that there is no way in hell that that bill is going to pass in the Senate. So we'll keep you posted. I'm sure you'll keep yourself posted. But I'm so fascinated with this film. I love the idea that you went to Connie Norman because, like you said, there's so many important matriarchs and patriarchs and forefathers and foremothers out there that we don't ever hear about. So it's really important to bring about these stories so that the next generation can learn from these iconic people. So what was your inspiration with Connie Norman specifically? How did it come to be?
Well, all my films have always had a very political activist bent. And the way this film came to me is I was, sitting watching my former film, Raising Zoe, and somebody tapped me in the back and said, "Oh, great film, love the family. So what's your next project?" And like most filmmakers, storytellers hate that question because it puts a lot of pressure. And he said, "Why don't you make a film about my friend Connie Norman?" I had seen a poster of Connie Norman in all pink, the one that when her fist is up. And I thought she was African American because of her, my assumption of her afro. And then when I mentioned that clip that I saw and of her with Wally George, and then I saw another one where she's wearing the red sweater and just being more calm, more subdued, more conscious of what she was saying and being smart as hell. I said, well, this is the film that I'm going to spend my next 3 years of my life digging, resourcing, researching. And luckily enough, I met some of her friends from ACT UP LA who's still alive. Some of them live with HIV for many, many years, who have had the wherewithal of filming Connie at every aspect of her life. Not only when she was getting arrested or demonstrating or in marches or die-ins, they also had footage of her hanging out in Kauai, where she did her respite and started to, decompress a little bit from the everyday, struggle of being an out, grassroots street activist. And I thought, I think I have a film here. I mean, it really shows her 10 years of her life, how she navigated not only her transness and her gender journey, but also her being an HIV woman, knowing that how little time she had ahead of hers. And as you mentioned very well, her sights at the end of her life were on the future. Her legacy and her concern was of the trans children she was leaving behind, and she made sure that there was a trans woman taking over for her after she was gone. And that woman is in the film, and her name is Valerie Spencer.
Oh, I know Valerie Spencer, of course. That is fantastic.
Who doesn't know Valerie Spencer?
Right, who doesn't know Valerie Spencer? Exactly. But thank you, Dante,
She's a goddess.
for taking the time to make a film like this and for telling Bambi Salcedo's story and all these other trans activists out there that are fighting the good fight and are often gone unnoticed because they're not getting the airtime and the attention that they should be getting.
Well, I think we owe our freedoms that we have right now, even gay marriage, to those trans women who walked the streets and didn't take it. They were out on the streets. And I think I'm glad that Florida is going to be not, banning that awful law, but in Arkansas, they already had 4 kids commit suicide because of it. So we can't forget them. The fight is not over. And if Connie was here, she would say, keep acting up, keep fighting back, that good fight, get in good trouble, and get on the streets. Join me on the streets. So thank you, Florida. I hope you enjoyed the film. And I look forward to meeting you all in person someday.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dante.
Thank you.
So that is today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ evening news show. Is our community important to you?
Then help us by liking and subscribing, ring the bell for updates, share this news. We are the only LGBTQ television live video news in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
I'm your anchor, David Hopkins, and on behalf of anchors Tony Lima and Dr. Julio Capo Jr., we'll see you daily and tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Thank you.